Hey everyone, Bryan Baylon here, Realtor in Phoenix. And I thank you guys for watching this video if you're here live. And before we get started, just wanted to remind you, if you haven't already, to please subscribe to the channel, comment on this video. If you have any questions about the topic, would love to respond to you and engage your questions so that you can just be informed, right, of what's going on in the real estate world. Hopefully these videos are helping you as well. And again, thank you for watching. Today's topic is negotiation blunders as a buyer. And these are actually very, very common, as I've seen. Expectations out there as a buyer is, you're just wanting to buy a house. You may find something you love. Usually what happens before you purchase a home is you're shopping, you're looking at homes, you walk through it, you find something you love, and then you make an offer on it. And for you to get to the point where you make an offer on a home, you already have committed some level of emotional investment, some level of commitment to it. If you're a first-time home buyer, you think you're already putting all your chips into one property and eliminating everything else. So the pressure can be a little high and the emotions are going to be high. So hopefully these tips will help you to think clearly as you are putting in an offer, and also what happens when you receive a counter offer or communication from the seller or the listing agent. Okay, so the first one is lowball offers. That's the first mistake. So about 10 years ago, maybe even 12 years ago now, since 2020, in 2008, 2009, of course, the Great Recession occurred. It's May 2020 as this video is being filmed, and there could be another recession coming our way. In fact, with unemployment rates and the amount of retraction in the economy, you could argue that we're already in a recession. But the 2008 Great Recession, after that, there was a lot of foreclosures, short sales. Home prices retracted significantly from 2005, 2006, which was a massive craze in the real estate industry, where homes were selling a few times a year. The same home was selling a few times a year, and for profit every single time. So there's a lot of greed, and there was a lot of loans that were written that weren't supposed to be written. But once that crash happened in 2008, prices really dumped. You could buy a house for under around 160,000, 180,000 for a 4-bed, 2-bath, 2,300 square foot home. And there were just a lot of deals out there. So, you could think, well, you could be savvy, right? You can get into, if you can qualify for a loan, then you can get into a really good deal with a house where, a house is worth, they're listing it for 180. It's been sitting on that market for 6 months, 9 months, a year. You offer 140, 150 and it sells. You've probably heard people say that was happening, and you get excited and you go, well, I'm going to lowball, and so I can be really savvy with my negotiation and my offer and get a really good deal. So the difference between then and now is the fact that that was a buyer's market, a very strong buyer's market with an abundance of inventory. Right now, we are in a strong seller's market, meaning there's a low amount of supply, but the demand is still relatively high, just a little bit above normal, but our supply is at record low numbers. So that means that you have multiple buyers looking at the same properties, which drives prices upwards. So since we're in a seller's market and not in a buyer's market like 2008, even right now in May 2020, we're still in the seller's market in all of the major 17 cities in Maricopa County, that you are basically looking at a lowball offer being laughed at by a seller or not entertained, because there's others out there that will offer on that property near asking or at full price. So, just because somebody listed something, and this is more important, just because someone listed something at a price, sometimes what I've seen buyers do, especially first-time home buyers, they'll assume that price is what it's worth, and they're going to try and lowball it, get 10, 15, 20,000 under it, without looking at the data. So before you make an offer on something, what I typically do is I'll look at the comps of the home, and I'll make sure that it's worth what their offer or they're asking, what the seller's asking. And that's really where you base your decision more off of, because right now things are selling based on comps very, very strongly. So if something support the data in the neighborhood within a quarter mile supports that the house is worth 300,000, then more likely it's between 1% to 2% of 300,000. So to offer a 275 on that is highly unlikely. Plus, chances are somebody else is going to pick that up for closer to asking, or they'll just wait because it will sell if it's priced correctly. So lowball offers, watch out for those. Basically, if you have a mentality where you think you can get a really good price on somebody, if it's on the market on retail, that's going to be difficult to get it for anything significantly less, unless there's a condition or a reason, like condition issue, something's wrong with the property, it's an as-is condition. But if it's something that you can find off market, like let's say a neighbor or a friend of a friend who's selling their house, it's a chance you could get a better deal on that house because you're not putting on market. But once it goes on market and the data supports it, it's pretty much going to be at ask, or depending on seller motivation, it could be a little bit under asking price. So first one, avoid lowball offers. Number two is nitpicking a laundry list of items with repairs. So once you're done with the initial negotiations, what you want to do is get an inspector to come out. They'll do an inspection on the home, and then they will give you a report. Once you get the report, you can send in a request for repairs on the items that you find. I advise my clients, go after the major items only. So the temptation is, especially first-time home buyers, and I refer to this a lot because I work with a lot of them, is they want to fix every little thing because they don't know how to do some of the basic stuff. And that's okay, right? Because if you're a first-time homeowner, you'll start to learn those things, right? Like light switches that don't work and how to replace your light switch, or if your sink's leaking at the stop water valve, stuff like that, where you could replace those yourself, which actually isn't too hard, but it just is a learning curve, but it can be intimidating. So sometimes the temptation is just, let me just ask the sellers to fix everything so it's move-in ready, I don't worry about anything. The better mentality to have is go for the major items, because if you start listing every line item that you put on that contract, on that repair request form, is another mini heart attack for the seller, right? Because they're just thinking, okay, they want this, they want this, they want this. So that's a place to be very economical with the lines that you have, and to choose the things that are the most major items. So what are the most expensive things, and put those on there. Minor stuff, like light switches, like minor leaks, right? Or, if a faucet needs to be replaced, or a sink head or something like that, right? Needs to be repaired, then, that's something you could do on the side, or get a handyman, right? You could have, like, you get a list, look at your inspection report, get a list of all of this, the minor stuff, and then get a quote from a handyman. And if it can be done for under $1,000, then potentially you can negotiate for $1,000 off on those repairs. But I usually go for AC, right? Different roof tiles or issues in the roof, right? I'm gonna on the big stuff, right? And then plumbing, if there's any plumbing, would be next. And then electrical, there typically isn't, especially if it's a newer home. When I mean newer, anything 90s and newer. If it's built in the 60s and 70s, yeah, you're probably gonna, or even older than that, because there's historical districts built in the 40s, 50s. Then yeah, you're gonna need new electrical. But most of the times, those 40s and 50s have been done. The gray areas are in the 60s and 70s. They probably either haven't done it or they have, and if they haven't done it, then that could be your cost. So that's the thing, and that's maybe something that can be built in, not as a repair, but as a purchase price negotiation. Just slice it off the price. But you might want it fixed. You might not want to deal with that repair. So totally up to you. But make sure it's for major items and not nitpicking every little thing that is on an inspection report, because those things can definitely be exhaustive, and they're designed to be, because they're supposed to be a snapshot of the home. Number three is make sure you get the personal property that you want. Most common personal property requests are refrigerator, washer, and dryer. And then there's the above ground spa, and then any other thing that you might see, a grill, right? Or something that's out there you might like, or, fire pit or something like that, right? Or like a, not an actual built-in fire pit, but a fire pit that you can put in that's just there, I guess. That's nice, right? It's a one you buy from a store or something. But the personal property one, it has to be in writing. So if you want the refrigerator, it has to be in the contract. Washer and dryer has to be in the contract. But make sure that you check that right? And it's usually page 2 of the purchase contract in the Arizona Association of Realtors purchase contract. And you'll just make sure those boxes are checked. There's line items for refrigerator, washer, dryer, and also for above ground spa, and then other, so you can put other items that you want. So yeah, if you don't have those and you like what's in there, then yeah, that's something to ask for. Just know though that it's, if they don't offer it on the MLS, like they'll usually list it as being offered, and if it's not offered, then you're drawing right on the bottom line of the seller. So in the mind of a seller, if you're a buyer, is they want the most money that they can, and if the refrigerator costs them $1,500, washer and dryer costs them $2,500, both of them when they bought it new, then yeah, they're going to want to see that reflected maybe in the purchase price or the other terms in terms of closing cost concessions, all that kind of stuff. So, so remember, everything you ask for is a draw against the seller's bottom line, and you want to be very economical with what you ask for. So label what's most important to you. Like, do you really need a washer and dryer? Okay, great. Can you possibly afford to pay more out of pocket in closing costs? If that's true, then take the washer and dryer if they offer it, and then just pay more of your closing costs than asking for it, for example. Another one is review all of the terms and make sure it's all in writing. So I go over this with you if you're buying a house with me. I may go over all the terms, purchase contract. We either meet in person or we talk on the phone, and we go through each major item that you're looking at, and double check to make sure that whatever's in the purchase contract reflects what you want. So, and that we don't, I can't actually submit that offer unless you sign it. So every page you have to sign it, at the last page you sign. So in that event, go through it. If you have questions, let me know. And then we'll make sure that your offer is being presented in the best way represented as reflected in the purchase contract. And number 5, and this is kind of a humorous one, because if you're not currently buying a house, you can look at from the outside in and laugh at it. But number 5 is taking things personally. And this is my last little point here. But it's, taking things personally. So I've seen buyers who have put an offer in and they've encountered with something and have reacted in a way as if the seller is sticking it to them, or telling them off or something, or being unreasonable. And then they start to create a story in their head about how terrible the seller is and are taking advantage of them. And it doesn't even have to be a person, right? It could be owned by a single entity, like someone who is owner occupying and it was their primary residence, or it can be owned by an investment company or a large hedge fund, right? Sometimes you can, in your mind, as I tell them that, the buyers that, and they start to create, this is big company that, $1 billion, they have $1 billion. Like, why are they trying to stick it to the little guy, right? Stuff like that. And I guess it can be normal because, right, you're in a real estate transaction, emotions are high. But I really encourage you, if you are in a situation, no matter who the seller is, to look at the data and make that the arguing point. And try to avoid creating a story about the seller, right, and all that kind of stuff. And trust the process, and trust trust my information that I give you and what I've seen that's normal, because I can kind of bounce that off to you. Sometimes we don't realize where our expectations come. Sometimes, HGTV, you'll see people getting houses for $100,000 less than what it's worth, and that kind of stuff. But they don't always tell you why or how or what happened, right? Because it could also be, oh yeah, this is for TV or something. You know what I mean? So, or we'll give you some incentive on the back end or whatever, right? All negotiation, all real estate deals can be like, you think there's a standard way, but everything, and they teach us in real estate school, every single thing in real estate is negotiable. So there are some terms that you'd be shocked that you could make, like there's different options, different things like that you can do that really makes real estate fun, because you can construct deals and things like that. But as far as a typical residential real estate transaction, those things aren't necessarily needed. So there's things that are established as normal, right? Like straightforward house for sale. A buyer wants to buy it. All right, here are the places we can negotiate. If we need to introduce those options and creative financing, all that kind of stuff, then we can. But for the most part, pretty straightforward process. So with that said, as it is standard, whenever something is out of line, it's going to be pretty easy to spot. But again, I say, and I get it, right? Trust what I say. If we're a realtor, trust what I say. And like, if this is normal or not. But two, you can also vet that, right? We can look at the data and see, okay, in the market, what's common, right? Like if there's a house that's for sale, what's the average sales price to closed volume, like closed sales price? So like basically what's the difference? What's the average of all the homes on the market that have listed a home? And then what did it close at? And usually it's about 98.6 to 98.4 of the offer price or the original sales price to close ratio. So if somebody's offering you, if you feel like you're getting stiffed by the seller because they countered you, you asked for 4% down and they countered you for 1%, and you're like, oh, they're out to get me, right, or whatever, or even full price, and it's substantiated. Just look at the data and just be confident that, hey, this isn't unreasonable. So trying to take things personally, right? Things can happen, delays can happen, miscommunication can happen. We do the best we can. I do the best I can to make sure it's smooth as possible. But if that happens, most things in real estate can be fixed. It's okay. The most important thing is that you keep your head in the situation, look at the data so you can think clearly if this is the deal for you. As a buyer, you are protected with the laws of Arizona Association of Realtors and the contracts and just the Arizona laws protect the buyer in a real estate transaction more than the seller, because the buyer doesn't know what they're getting into and the seller knows what they're selling. So they see that the buyer has to do more due diligence, is taking a lot more risk than the seller is in the purchase. So they protect you with laws. So I can go over that in another video with how you're protected as a buyer. Joaquin, how's it going, man? Thanks for the wave and the shout out. You have a question. How would you consider those major fixes for those of us who may not know what is important? That is a good question. So when you go into an inspection, your inspector is a professional. They do inspections normally, right? Probably every week at least. And so inspection process, you go in, you hire an inspector, you set the appointment, they go out to the property, they inspect it for you. You show up after they're done and they go through the process of showing you what they found, the major items in the home. And then they tell you, well, we're going to also send you within 24 hours an inspection report so that you can see what our findings were. And we'll highlight what is important, like what is like must take care of now, watch this for the future and just monitor, or this is like, we saw this, we're calling it out, but it's not an issue. And so they're going to rate that from important to just, hey, we're just letting you know and disclosing it. So that's one layer. Another layer is when you go out there, then you can ask the questions, and I'll help you too, because I'll kind of take the perspective of a first-time home buyer and then ask those questions. Say, okay, so I'll ask my inspector, what is this? What do you think this? How serious could this be in the future, 2 years and 3 years? And they can recommend. One of my inspectors is a professional engineer, so they can also recommend how much it would cost to repair, and the length of time that you have, or how serious you need to take care of it, and what needs to be done, that kind of thing. So that's another layer. And then 3, I will advise too from what I've seen in the past, and give you some of the pointers of, how that would translate in a negotiation if we were to ask the seller, or we could even get other quotes, right? So we could have another contractor come out. If it's a roofing issue, roofer will come out, check it out, quote the roof, look at the underlayment sometimes, or if you need a structural engineer or whatever vendor. So hopefully that covers it. That's like 4 or 5 layers, probably 4 layers worth of protection that you have. But see, as you can see, and this goes back to my previous point of taking things personally and trusting the process, is that there are specific things that are built into the real estate process that I take my clients through to make sure that all of that is taken care of and you feel like you have the backing and the confidence to move forward, or at least know what steps to take if once the inspection report comes in, if you need more assurance on what is important, what isn't. So hope that helps there. And I appreciate that question. Thanks for the shout out. So appreciate you too. There's 2 people on. Joaquin's one of them. Whoever the other person is, thank you so much for watching and supporting the channel. If you haven't already, again, just want to remind you to subscribe to the channel. Trying to come out with every day, trying to come out with some more information and real estate tips for you. So if this has been helpful, please show your support, and also share if you can. Share the channel if you have a friend, family member, someone who you feel like could benefit from this. We greatly appreciate it. Again, Joaquin, you're welcome. Glad it was helpful. Thank you guys so much again for watching, and we will catch you next time.